Production title Waitress found a cursed man shivering in the rain. She didn't realize she just saved the life of a mafia king. Chapter 1 What the Rain Carries in the Rain started at 2:17 a.m., which Nadia knew because she had just flipped the breakfast sign to the window and glanced at the clock above the pie case. By 2:24 it was the kind of rain that had opinions about things. It came in sideways, it argued with the gutters. It made the street outside look like a river that had not yet decided where it was going. She almost didn't check the alley. She had a policy about alleys, specifically about the one that ran beside Sal's on the east side, which had, over 4 years of night shifts, provided her with enough irregular human experiences to fill a moderately disturbing memoir. She had learned to give it a wide perimeter after midnight. But something made her stop at the side door on her way to the recycling bins. Some specific quality of stillness in the wrong place. A shape that didn't fit the geometry of cardboard boxes and old crates. She opened the door. She saw him. He was folded against the wall like something that had been dropped from a height and hadn't fully decided to stay down. Dark suit, expensive even in its ruin. One hand pressed flat against his left side. His face, sharp-jawed, shuddered even in unconsciousness, tilted toward the rain as if he'd stopped having the energy to turn away from it. He was bleeding. Not dramatically, not the way it happens in films. Quietly, the way serious things bleed. Without announcement, without asking for help. She should have closed the door. She knew this with the same clarity with which she knew the price of eggs, the bus schedule, and the fact that her brother's tuition was due in 11 days. A man bleeding in an alley beside a diner at 2 a.m. was not a situation that simplified itself. She grabbed the first aid kit from under the counter, her rain slicker from the hook by the back door, and went back out. Hey. She crouched beside him, her knees hitting the wet pavement. Hey, I need you to open your eyes. She pressed 2 fingers to his throat. His pulse was there, rapid, thready, but present. A fact. She could work with facts. I'm going to move your hand and look at the wound. I need you not to fight me on that. His eyes opened. Dark, fever bright, and she registered this with some part of her brain that kept cataloging things even in a crisis, not frightened. Whatever else this man was, he did not scare easily. He looked at her with the particular assessment of someone deciding very rapidly how much to trust a variable. Going to want to stop bleeding, she said, since his expression seemed to be requesting some kind of credential. I can help with that, or you can lie here and let the rain make that decision for you. Your call. Something shifted in his face, a hairline fracture in the composure. Inside, he said, his voice barely above the rain. Not a hospital. She should have asked why. She didn't. She got her shoulder under his arm, registered that he was considerably heavier than her estimate, recalibrated, and moved. 30 seconds later, Seo Hyun-woo, chairman of the Seo Group, Jade Dragon of the Eastern Syndicate, a man that 17 governments had open files on, was sitting in a vinyl booth at Sal's Corner Diner, while a waitress with rain-soaked braids pressed a folded dish towel against his side and told him to keep his hand on it and not let go. This needs more than a dish towel, she said, examining the wound with the focused calm of someone running a triage that no one had asked her to run. It's not arterial, but it's not nothing. Do you have any allergies? He shook his head. Good, stay there. She was already moving. He watched her work, the efficiency of it, the total absence of performance. She was not doing this for him to witness. She was doing it because there was a thing that needed doing, and she was the person present to do it. In 30 years of reading people, the only skill that had kept him alive longer than his intelligence, he had rarely seen anything that quality of uncomplicated. Chapter 2, the measure of a person. She had field-dressed worse. The summer her brother was 12, he had put his arm through a greenhouse window, and the nearest clinic had been 40 minutes away. She had learned in that 40 minutes what she was made of. What she was made of, it turned out, was the practical application of staying calm while something important was fragile. She cleaned the wound, closed it with butterfly strips. Don't argue. You need stitches. These are the next best thing. And wrapped it with the efficiency of someone who had already decided that getting it right mattered more than getting credit for it. Then she made coffee. It was 3 a.m. Coffee was a reasonable response to most things at 3 a.m. She set a mug in front of him and sat across the booth, because she was not going to stand over a man in a booth like he was a customer requiring management. She looked at him directly, which she understood was a thing people did not often do to him. She could tell by the fractional pause it produced. "Not going to ask me what happened," he said. It was not quite a question. "You know what happened," she said. "What I need to know is whether whatever happened is going to walk through that door in the next hour and make my night more complicated than it already is." A pause. "No," he said. "They believe I am dead, all right." She wrapped both hands around her own mug. "Then you can sit here until the rain stops or until you can walk steadily, whichever comes first. I'll know if you can't walk steadily because you'll list to the left. You're already doing it slightly." He looked at her. It was the kind of look she imagined a cartographer gave to an unmapped coast, not hostile, not dismissive, genuinely trying to understand the territory. "Why did you help me? You were bleeding in my alley and you were still breathing," she said, as if this were the most straightforward equation in the world. "Those two facts together constitute a situation I can do something about. I generally do things I can do something about." Silence. Outside, the rain continued its argument with the gutters. "Seo Hyun-woo," he said, after a moment that felt like a decision. He said it the way a man sets down a weapon deliberately, watching for the reaction. She knew the name. She had a newspaper. She had, more to the point, the kind of working-class intuition that recognizes dangerous men not from news articles but from the specific quality of their stillness, the way they occupy space as if they have already mapped every exit, every threat, every variable. She did not move. She did not change her expression. She picked up her coffee mug and drank. "Nadia," she said. "Osai, I work the midnight shift. I get off at 8. She set the mug down. "You want something to eat. You've lost blood. You need calories." He stared at her for 2 full seconds. Then, "Yes." She got up and went to the kitchen. He watched the door swing shut behind her and did something he had not done in front of another person in longer than he could clearly recall. He let out a breath that contained, quietly, the entire weight of the evening. The knife. The parking garage. The specific, cold education of learning that the man you trusted with your movements for 6 years had sold that information to your oldest enemy. The diner smelled of coffee and dish soap and something baking. She'd put something in the oven, he realized. At 3 a.m., for a stranger she did not know she was baking something. He did not have a framework for this. He filed it under anomaly. He suspected, with the instinct that had kept him alive through worse nights than this one, that this anomaly was going to matter. Chapter 3. The photograph in the rain coat. He slept for 3 hours in the corner booth. She did not wake him. She did her side work, restocked the condiment caddies, prepped the breakfast mise place, and let the diner be what it was. A room where it was possible, at least temporarily, to be safe. When he woke at 6, she had eggs and toast and a second pot of coffee ready. He ate without speaking. She had learned across 4 years of the midnight shift that the men and women who came to diners at strange hours and ate in silence were not being rude. They were using the meal to remember that ordinary things still existed. He looked better. Not well, the color hadn't fully returned and she could see by the set of his jaw that moving hurt. But the fever brightness in his eyes had dimmed to something that was merely watchful. "There's a woman," he said, without preamble when he'd finished. "My housekeeper. She will have realized by now that I haven't returned. She'll be making calls. I need to reach her before those calls become complicated. There's a landline in the back office." She jerked her head toward the kitchen. "Sal doesn't know I know the code, but it's the year the Cubs won the series, so..." Something that was almost amusement crossed his face. He stood carefully, one hand braced on the table, and she walked him to the back office and gave him the privacy of the door. She was wiping down the counter when he came back out. "I have a car coming," he said. 20 minutes. He reached into his jacket, the ruined one which she draped over the back of a chair, and produced a card. It was matte black. One line of text, SEOHW, and a number. "Oh, you," he said. "You don't," she said. She put the card in her apron pocket, not to keep the debt open, because a man who had just told his people he was alive deserved the dignity of not having it argued about. He held her gaze for a moment. "Then, the building you work in. This block. The whole block." A pause that felt considered. I own it. I bought it 8 months ago from the previous landlord's estate. I want you to know that." Nadia set down her cloth. "Why do you want me to know that?" "Because in my world," he said, "information kept from people who deserve it is a form of disrespect. You deserve it." He moved toward the door, then stopped. He was looking at the shelf by the register, the one where Sal kept his reference books, the laminated menu history, a few paperbacks left by regulars. His gaze had stopped specifically on the brown paper bag tucked at the end of the shelf. "What is that?" "Old Mrs. Lim left it," Nadia said. "She passed about 6 weeks ago. She used to sit at the counter every Thursday. After she passed, her daughter brought a bag of her things for me, said her mother always talked about the diner, wanted me to have something. I haven't been able to open it yet." He looked at her. "May I?" She nodded, not entirely sure why. He carried the bag to the nearest table and opened it with a care that she would think about later, a precision that was not coldness but its exact opposite, the way some people are careful with things because they understand how easily they break. He removed a small book, cloth-bound, old. He opened it. A photograph fell out. She picked it up before he could. A small boy, Korean, maybe 5, laughing open-mouthed at whoever was holding the camera, held in the arms of a woman whose face was turned away. On the back, in a hand that had tremored, Seo Hyun-woo, age 5. "My heart's best day." The room went very quiet. Nadia looked at the photograph. She looked at the man across the table from her, at the line of his jaw and the particular angle of his childhood laughter, which had not entirely disappeared even now. "She knew you," she said. Not an accusation. A fact gently placed. Seo Hyun-woo did not answer immediately. He was looking at the photograph in her hand with an expression she recognized, not from any person she'd met, but from something deeper than that. The expression of someone encountering proof that they were loved during the years when they decided they weren't. "She was my mother's friend," he said finally. "From before my father took me and left Korea. I didn't know she was in this city." He paused. "I didn't know she had been here the entire time." Nadia set the photograph down between them on the table. "She talked about a boy from home," she said quietly. "She never said a name. She said he had his mother's laugh and that she hoped, wherever he was, someone was feeding him properly." She looked at him. "I used to bring her extra toast." Something broke open in his face very briefly and then was controlled. But she saw it. She was very good at seeing things. Chapter 4, The Shadow Comes Due. He came back the next afternoon. He was different in daylight. Or perhaps the diner was different with real sun in it, actual customers at 3 of the booths, the lunch rush beginning its low hum. He wore a different suit, charcoal, impeccable, and if you had not seen him bleeding in an alley 17 hours ago, you would have had no reason to revise the initial reading. A wealthy, controlled man, comfortable with the weight of his own presence. Nadia poured him coffee without asking. He sat at the counter this time, not a booth, and she understood that this was intentional. He could see the door from the counter and the side window and the alley entrance. He was a man who always knew where the exits were. "The building," he said when she'd set the coffee down. "I want to discuss the building with you." "Don't own the building," she said. "You should." He wrapped both hands around the mug. She noticed he did this, anchored himself with the warmth of it, a detail that sat oddly against everything else he projected. "The block was bought as a portfolio acquisition. My team flagged it as underperforming. They recommended conversion, residential, luxury tier." He paused. "I have not approved the conversion." Nadia looked at him steadily. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked me last night if what happened to me was going to walk through that door and make your night more complicated." He met her eyes. "I want to tell you now in daylight with time to think. The answer may have been premature. My situation is not resolved. There are people who will be looking for me. They may, if they are thorough enough, trace my movements to this block. Are you warning me or asking me something? Both." A pause. "I'm asking whether you want me to leave and not return." "I will respect that answer." She considered it. She was not impulsive. 4 years of midnight shifts had cured her entirely of impulsivity. She thought about the photograph. She thought about Mrs. Lim's extra toast. She thought about a small boy with his mother's laugh, growing into a man who ate alone and had been betrayed by someone he trusted and still, last night, had told her the truth about the building before he had any reason to. "You can come back," she said. "But if someone walks through that door looking for trouble, you deal with it outside. I have regulars." He almost smiled. "Understood." They came on the fourth day, not Kwon's men, his own people. 4 of them, the new inner circle his housekeeper had assembled after verifying he was alive, arriving with the energy of people who had been very frightened and were now converting that fear into controlled logistics. They parked their 3 black cars at angles that disrupted the lunch traffic flow and came in with the synchronized purposefulness that Nadia recognized as professional, not threatening toward her, but entirely indifferent to the fact that they were standing in a diner where actual people were trying to eat soup. She walked to the nearest one. He was broad-shouldered, expressionless, wearing an earpiece. "You're blocking the fire lane," she said, "and one of your cars is in my delivery driver's spot. I have a restaurant supply truck due in 20 minutes. Can you move the middle one to the other side of the street?" He stared at her. She waited. He moved the car. Hyun-woo, who had seen this from the counter, said nothing, but she felt his attention on her back like a hand pressed flat between her shoulder blades, steady, warm, a kind of astonished recognition. His lead man leaned down and spoke quietly in Korean for 30 seconds. Hyun-woo's face did not change. He set down his coffee cup. "I have to go," he said. He looked at Nadia directly. "Kwon is moving faster than expected. I need to be somewhere that is not here." A pause. "I need you to do something for me. If it involves me hiding anything or lying to anyone, the answer is no. It involves you accepting a document." He slid a folded envelope across the counter. "It transfers ownership of this building to your name. It was already prepared. I had it drawn up the morning after." He held her gaze. "It isn't payment for what you did. You made it clear you don't operate that way. Consider it a correction. The building should belong to someone who gives people extra toast." She looked at the envelope for a long moment. "You might need something to come back to," she said. "I intend to come back," he said. "But if I don't, the building should still belong to you." He stood, straightened his jacket with the careful economy of a man managing pain he had decided not to acknowledge, and walked out the door. The black cars closed around him. The street rearranged itself. Within 40 seconds, it was as if he'd never been there. Nadia looked at the envelope on the counter. She looked at the coffee cup he'd left still warm, barely touched. She picked up the envelope and put it in her apron pocket, next to the matte black card with the number she hadn't called. Chapter 5: What the Rain Left Behind. 6 months later, the building got its scaffolding off. The renovation had been, as Nadia had specified in the very first meeting with the architectural firm, a meeting she had attended with the building's deed in her name, and the calm of someone who had decided that if she was going to do this, she was going to do it correctly. The renovation had been about restoration, not replacement. The bones were good. The bones had always been good. What the building needed was not to be converted into something it wasn't, but to be taken seriously as what it already was. Sal's Corner Diner was still Sal's. The booths were reupholstered in the same shade of dark red. She'd found a fabric swatch from the original supplier, still in business in Cincinnati. The counter had been refinished rather than replaced, its surface now smooth and clean, the grain of the old wood visible beneath the new lacquer. The kitchen had been brought fully up to code, which had required approximately 4 weeks of her life and several frank conversations with a contractor who kept suggesting upgrades she didn't want. The apartments above the diner were renovated and re-tenanted. 3 families who'd been on a waiting list for affordable housing in this neighborhood that the city kept meaning to forget, and kept failing to. Mrs. Lim's photograph was framed now, behind the register, next to the one of Sal on opening day in 1987. A small Korean woman with her face turned away from the camera, holding a laughing child. Nadia had put it there the week the scaffolding came down. It seemed right for it to be in a room where people were fed. The postcard arrived on a Thursday because things that matter tend to arrive on ordinary days. It was from Busan, a harbor shot, the water very blue. The handwriting on the back was precise and slightly compressed, the handwriting of someone who had learned to communicate in small spaces. The situation resolved. Kwon's overreach became his own undoing. These things tend to correct themselves when enough people are watching. I am in Busan for 2 weeks, which is longer than I have stayed anywhere without a specific operational reason in approximately 9 years. I find that I am eating properly. I thought you would want to know that. H asterisk below it, a single additional line, written in a slightly different ink as if added after. The diner on Hwangnyong has similar coffee. It is not the same. I noticed the difference. Asterisk Nadia read it twice, standing at the counter, the Thursday morning light coming through the new windows at the angle she'd specifically requested from the architect, warm from the east, the kind of light that makes ordinary rooms feel like they were built for exactly this. She tucked the postcard into her apron pocket, next to nothing, because the pocket was empty today, the way pockets are when you are not in the middle of anything requiring you to carry things. She had not called the number on the matte black card. She had not needed to. Some things resolve themselves through channels that don't require a phone. She refilled the corner booth's coffee, a young woman studying for an exam, surrounded by highlighted notes, who had been sitting there since 6 and would probably be there until 9, and who got free refills without asking because Nadia could recognize sustained effort when she saw it. At some point, she understood, he would probably come back. Not because she had saved his life, though she had. Not because he owed her anything, though the building deed said otherwise. But because people find their way back to the rooms where they were first treated as simply, unceremoniously human, where someone pressed a dish towel against their wound and asked about their allergies and made them coffee at 3 a.m. without requiring anything in return. Those rooms are rarer than money. They are rarer than power. They are rarer even than safety because safety can be purchased, but the feeling of being genuinely seen requires something that cannot be bought. It requires someone who looks and does not look away and acts on what they see without waiting to be asked. The rain had brought him in. The diner had held him. And somewhere in the space between those two facts, something had shifted in both of them. Some long calcified thing had come loose, had been quietly, without ceremony, put back differently. Outside, the street was ordinary and alive. Inside, the coffee was hot, the light was good, and Nadia Osei, who had never once stopped doing what she could do about the things she could do something about, started the breakfast rush. The end next. Please subscribe.